Hutchinson City Council. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and would you call roll, please, Linda?
Dave Line.
Here.
Pyrus de Carvalho. Soldner. Here. Inskeep.
Here.
Deckant.
Present.
Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor Peterson, I think you're going to be praying for us this morning.
It's a privilege and honor to do that. Amen. Let's pray. Father, we just thank you and praise you and give you glory and honor. We thank you, Father God, that we live in a land that has so much freedom. And Father, we just thank you for today, the freedom to vote. And Father, as many people are standing up, that Father, they're standing up for what they believe in. And Father, we thank you for that. And we thank you, Father, for the city council, the leadership, Father God, our police department, fire department. Father, we just thank you for all the workers within this community. And Father, we just thank you that we have a right to voice our opinion within the city. But not only that, but we have a right to voice our opinion, but not only that is to do something when we're asked to do and to be what we're supposed to be. Thank you, Father, for this council meeting today. We thank you, Father God, for the wisdom and the guidance and the leadership, Father. We just thank you for these things, and we give you the praise and glory in Jesus' name. And they all said, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Darrell. All right, we have a proclamation this morning. Mr. Hooker, are you here? Is there anyone from the VFW? That's all right. Okay. Whereas, since the birth of our nation, American patriots have stepped forward to serve our country and defend our way of life. Whereas, with honor and distinction, generations of servicemen and women have taken up arms to win our independence, preserve our union, and secure our freedom. Whereas, these heroes have put their lives on the line so that we might live in a world that is safer, freer, and more just, and we owe them a profound debt of gratitude. Whereas, throughout the month of November, the citizens of Reno County salute the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen who have rendered the highest service any American can offer. Whereas November 11, 2018 marks the 64th anniversary of the modern Veterans Day holiday and the 99th anniversary of the first Armistice Day commemorating the end of World War I. Whereas numerous celebrations, events, and remembrances will be held throughout the month of November in Reno County. Now, therefore, I, Stephen A. Deckant, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, do hereby recognize the month of November 2018 as Veterans Appreciation Month, and call upon the citizens of Hutchinson to dedicate themselves to fulfilling our commitment to all those who serve in our name and honoring those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. All citizens are hereby encouraged to participate in the celebrations, events, and remembrances that will be held throughout the month of November. I've been invited to address the VFW Sunday, Veterans Day, so I'll be reading this proclamation again that day and offering them this written proclamation. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 4, oral communications from the audience.
This is the time that members of the audience have an opportunity to address the council on matters that are not already on the agenda. When you address, if you would give us your name and address, please, and also limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes. Anyone who wishes to address? Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I'm Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities. Actually have a little bit of good news this morning that I'd like to share with everyone.
As opposed to you normally come with bad news?
Well, that's true.
Nah.
We always have good news in parks,
Yes.
right? So I found out a couple weeks ago, that the Parks Department was awarded a $10,000 grant for a new shelter an open-air shelter at Orchard Park, be next to the playground. It's kind of an interesting story on how this grant happened. I think end of May, I get a phone call from an employee of One Oak, and he was there with his family at Orchard Park, noticed there wasn't a place to have a picnic lunch, and then told me about the One Oak Foundation and the grant opportunities they had. And he did say that the process actually had to start internally, and so he began working with the plant manager and the foundation. Several weeks down the road, I get an email from the foundation, and basically they are highly encouraging me to fill out an official grant application for this project. And then, like I said, a couple weeks ago, found out that we were awarded $10,000. The funds will be used to purchase basically a kit for the all-steel picnic shelter, very similar to the one at Southwest Bricktown. It will be slightly smaller than that. So it will pay for the entire building. The city will have a little bit of money in concrete. I estimate about $1,500 in concrete, and then a few $100s in miscellaneous supplies like electrical connections and those sorts of things. We've talked to One Oak about possibly partnering with them for some of the construction, so they may come out and help actually build it as well. So we haven't set that in stone yet, but they're definitely interested in helping. So again, I just wanted to kind of pass on the word that we got the grant. And also, this was a project that's been on my radar for a long time to do a small shelter there. This was just a great opportunity to partner with One Oak. So.
Excellent. We just went ahead this morning. Thanks, Justin.
Very good one.
Anyone else? Jim?
Good morning, Council. Jim Seitnader, Downtown Development, and following Justin with some more good news. Just got a letter, the mayor got a letter from the state of Kansas that we were awarded $250,000 for the CDBG grant for the renovation of the Stevens building. So
Wonderful.
it'll be a great project, business expansion with Jen Cooley's Evolution Salon and Boutique, and her and Scott do great things downtown, and so just very pleased to give you that information.
Maybe there'll be enough in there to keep him off a ladder.
We sure hope so.
Right?
Yeah.
Is there a story to that?
Yeah.
He fell off the building or off the ladder or the roof or all the above or something.
Yeah, out of one of the
He's-
windows onto a roof trying to install a flagpole all by himself. If you know Scott, he's a doer, and so hopefully he'll at least have help when he tries that again.
Yeah.
So,
I can make light because he's on the mend now, so
Yeah.
he's doing better.
Good.
yeah. Well, thank you.
Excellent news. Thank you,
Great
Jim.
news.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Justin, we're sorry we covered your good news up with $250,000, but
Both good news. It's
all
not,
about
it's not
timing.
the amount. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council? Seeing none, next item, please.
Item 5, consent agenda.
I would like to pull out or at least discuss a bit item B off the consent agenda, the lease agreement with Salt Hawk Archery. If it pleases the rest of the council, we'll just
Sure.
raise the issue of the questions I've got now, and then we can go from there. What struck me struck me at least on reading through the lease agreement, is that we receive for lease of this property to be used by the Archery Association a sum of $1, and that essentially means we're giving it at no cost. And I guess I just wondered as I read that, is it the best stewardship of property that we're responsible for? It's not that I would expect that we'd become rich off of this organization or this particular piece of property, but should we consider something, maybe a couple $100 or something as a lease price for that property and for the use of it? So I toss it out. If there's any sense of kind of agreeing with that, maybe we will set a different amount. If not, I'm not going to get up and bang my drum hard, but that's what struck me as I read through that and thought about it.
Do you know much of the history? I don't, and I'm asking anybody who might, of this lease agreement, how long it's been in play. things like that nature. I'm looking at you two
Been around,
gentlemen.
yeah.
Been around.
It's way before my time.
Predates you, okay.
This is we're on live TV, but I'm going to tell you, this is what I call one of those Joe P. contracts, because that's the area it came from. It's not one that is a moneymaker. We don't offer any services. They're down inside the levee. That's where that area is. And they've been there a long time, and this is just a continuation of what we have.
I would guess too, how many people even belong to the
I
archery?
couldn't tell you how
It's a
many
very
are.
small
It's
group.
not a big
When I was
group.
the assistant, I worked on that at least back to 89, 94 range, so it predates
Yeah.
all that. You know, for comparison purposes, let's look at the lease. We leased the land at Fun Valley for the paintball group. What do we charge them per year? And it's a for-profit. I mean, they're charging
Yeah.
people to come and go.
Yeah,
Yeah, good morning, Justin Combs, Director of Parks again. So the Extreme Crossfire lease, I believe it's a $1,500
Yeah.
a year. To me, the difference between the two is at Fun Valley, that property is a little more commercial. I think you can do more activities there than you can inside the levee. Whereas the archery range, they're literally inside the levee, so they could go underwater at any time, completely underwater. So to me, that's a difference. Where Extreme Crossfire, they have a little bit different scenario with the property. So, but yeah, to ask for a $300 or $500 lease payment, I don't know that would be out of line. I don't know what their what their membership is, so I can ask those questions.
And the reason it's on the agenda today is because it's up. Did anybody make any requests to have it on there from their club?
What's a
it renews in
renewal?
January.
2019, January 2019.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
I
they
mean,
just
but they're
started.
actively involved in
Oh,
it?
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it seems to me that this is land that essentially is not going to be usable for much of anything else. So, I mean, I don't have any problem with the dollar
And we,
as a token.
one of the issues with of course, it's inside the levee, and we keep very close eye on activities there, so they're not, hurting the levee at all on the levee. I know Jeff Nichols probably views that quite regularly, and I think they've been really good tenants for $1. So
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Well, maybe we ought to perhaps ask Justin to maybe have a conversation with that organization, since this doesn't renew until January.
yeah, we have
and,
our
time to
date.
take
Yeah.
it.
and revisit that and see, check the temperature there, and perhaps there's some nominal amount that.
Yeah, we can figure out what their membership
I'd
is.
suggest someplace between 100 and 250, maybe.
Okay.
So yeah, I like that idea.
Sure.
Having some
Justin,
conversation.
are you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll
Just remove that.
pull that
that.
off,
Yeah.
and off the consent agenda. It'll come back to us again between now and the end of the year. That leaves us with
I'm Dean Sorensen. Over this archery thing, I've helped them guys move into stuff, and basically I've done it for free. The guys don't have a lot. I'll be honest with you. They're trying to just do the best they can, what they got. They're starting some young archery things for some young children in there. They supply everything. As far as much money, they do keep the property very nice and kept up for you. You don't have to spend any money on the place whatsoever. I would highly suggest you keep it where they got some place to go shoot some bow and arrows. They can teach the young people how to do stuff right. And there's not a lot of membership dues. There's just not a lot of money in that organization. Most of it is donated.
Okay.
I've helped them move stuff in there personally with me and my company, and I've done it just because they needed it done, and there is no money. And the guys themselves bring their own archery stuff in. There's not really like they got a big budget. The guys that do put it on own the stuff personally. They come out and they do this personally themselves, just for a pride and just have a good place for them to shoot and be out of the way and get stuff going is well worth it to the city, the county, and everything else, I do believe.
okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Dave.
you for your input.
Thank you.
Okay, well, all that said, then.
I've got one question, if I
Okay.
can, on the appropriation ordinance, perhaps a question to Angela or John. I noticed that we're making an additional payment to Kohl's for their incentive package. I guess I'm just curious in terms of what the status of that is, and is this the last payment, and where do we stand on that?
It should be, boy, I couldn't answer
Yeah.
that, but it should be very close to being the very end.
Fulfilled.
I think next year's the last.
This last year.
Okay.
It's a much less.
Yeah, and it gets smaller every year. I don't have that
Does it?
file. I can give that.
Yeah, the budget
breakdown.
showed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah.
I just was curious in terms of the status.
I think we've
of it.
got maybe this year and then maybe next year, and that
Okay.
incentive will be paid
And
out.
they're fulfilling their commitment and their
Yes.
requirements.
Right.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay,
Good
now
question.
can I make a motion?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
I will move that we approve the consent agenda as presented with the withdrawal of item B.
Been a motion, is there a second?
A second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes. Next item.
Item 6A, consider ordinance rezoning property on East 4th Avenue.
Good morning, Amy Allison, Senior Planner.
Morning, Amy.
Morning, Amy.
All right. As Linda already mentioned, we are there is a request to rezone the property 2301 East 4th Avenue and 00000 East 4th Avenue, 2 lots there. The current zoning is C4 Special Commercial. The applicant is requesting to rezone it to I3 Heavy Industrial. The applicant is D&D Towing, and Mr. Sorensen is here. If you have any questions about the specific use that he'd like to have on the property, I'm sure he'd be happy to talk about that. Here are the 2 lots in question. They are on the southeast corner of Superior and 4th Avenue. They are located adjacent to the existing D&D Towing site, and I believe they had just recently acquired these 2 lots, and that is why they're here with the request today. The current zoning for the lots is C4, Special Commercial. As you can see, adjacent to those 2 lots, it is zoned I3 for the D&D Towing site. North of the property is I1, and then on the other side, it's actually C4. It shows MP there. We're having some issues with some of our GIS data layers, but it is zoned C4, not MP. Right across the street is zone C4, and then a little bit south of there is also zoned C4. So, like I said, we're having a little difficulties with our GIS layer. So, the the comprehensive land use map designation is industrial for these lots. That whole area is actually industrial. As we see more and more properties along that corridor transition, that's kind of why it has that comprehensive land use designation. Here's the property in question. We're looking east, so it's a paved lot. There is a small building. You can see there the edge of it on the right side of the photo. And then here's some photos for the surrounding area. Looking across the street, you have an auto vehicle place, small, I think it's metal recycling. You have the mobile home park that is located across the street. To the west of the property, we have a vacant lot, and to the southwest of the property, there is a storage facility. The Planning Commission considered this case on, I believe it was October 9th, and they voted, they recommended approval of the request with a vote of 8-0. There is a vacancy on that commission at this time. This is kind of the end of my presentation, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and also Mr. Sorensen is here if you have questions for him.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Sorensen to come forward if he would, and just to give us a outline in terms of your intended use of the property.
Yes, my name is Dean Sorensen. I own D&D Towing. Right now, the present people, I'd like to rent the lot to, it's rented to a trucking company. And what they'd like to do is use the, can I get my picture here?
Amy's gonna get you there.
No, the other one. That's either way. Here's fine. What they'd like to do is be able to park some semis in this area right here. We've cut a gateway in here to make it when they come in here and come out here. It's not for trailers or anything else. It's strictly for semis to pull in there and park. They're actually a vendor of Kroger's, and they're just looking for a place they can park their trucks and have the guys where it's a safe place to be.
And it's off the street. So
It's off the
Yeah.
streets. That's the most
Yeah.
important thing we're trying to do is keep the guys off the streets.
Okay.
So the question, we periodically see tractors and trailers parked up
No
by the
trailers.
hospital.
No trailers.
Up by the hospital,
Oh, by the
north
hospital?
of Trinity.
Yeah,
And I've
please.
always been troubled by
I have
allowing,
too for
allowing
years.
that use. Would those folks be able to utilize or to rent space in this area here?
There is an option because I do own everything. I own the whole 2 blocks. I own the warehouse and everything else. There are stalls available. In fact, I rent to ethanol poets are ready to be able to park their vehicles over there at my warehouse area. I do have stalls available for people in this town if they do want to do it. I would really like to use the area there's a set of railroad tracks right here, and I own everything over to here. Eventually, what I'd really like to do is take this grass area and put it into a rocked area where there is a place for trucks in this town to rent to get them off the streets of Hutchinson, where it would be in the industrial area. That is my future plans with that piece of property. Me and John will have to discuss that one of these days. But no, I agree with you guys. I'm very upset that there's several businesses that park their commercial trucks on the city streets and have there's cow trucks parking on that like 20th Street. You know, that's not very appropriate for a city, I don't think, for people to come in and see. It would be much better if they were in a parking lot. And but I do have parking available for people if they do need it. Right now,
you could currently rent out some space for that purpose.
yes, I already rent out space.
Already do that.
So
This
to our,
area right here will be for First Fleet trucking. They said in time there'll be at least 30 trucks pulling in here and pulling out of Kroger's for them. It's a real I'm excited to have a trucking company move into our town and do things.
Yeah.
But I did tell them straight up, we will not have no trailers there. The trailers, they said, was perfect for us because their trailers are Kroger's. All they're looking for a place is that their drivers can have a place to park their semis where it's safe.
so to our city attorney, Paul, what authority do we have then to remove those tractor trailers that are parked on our public streets? Do we have any authority?
Talking about up on,
Up on
20th?
20th, yeah, that's one area. I know there's multiple
they're-
areas, but
they're not illegally
are there other areas? Pardon me?
they're not illegally parked.
They are
It's-
not,
It's a commercial.
Yeah, it's zoned
zone.
commercial.
oh, they're not illegally parked?
Nope, nope.
Well, and then the question is,
Do we change the
how would
zoning?
you change that?
Yeah, that's a question we'd like to find out too.
I mean, that's
'cause
the gate, that's the gateway to our
The
hospital.
Yeah.
I've always been troubled by that.
Well, it's just, yes, there's people that are running businesses out of their own homes and parking commercial vehicles on your city streets. Which, I have spent the money and I've bought the whole 2 blocks so that my stuff's not on your city streets.
Which we appreciate, Dean.
Well, I do too, really. But no, we're really excited about First Fleet moving into that building and everything else, and they've been very good tenants. All they're asking is they can use that lot because it is fenced and lockable, that they can put their semis in there.
Yeah.
And then they're only talking like 10 semis in there at a time usually. The real benefit is they work for Kroger's, so it's what you guys will see during the day is a whole line of trucks. The thing is, they're all out all night long, so that everybody will drive by and think they're not doing nothing, but no, they work all night long. They don't work all day long.
The I-4, and this is probably a question for Amy. The I-4 would allow trailer parking though as well, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah,
It does.
okay. Is there any screening required for this sort of a use?
If it's
Don't go away,
located
Dean.
adjacent to residential, then yes, there would be some screening requirements.
Mhm.
But since it isn't located to adjacent to any residential uses, no, not in this
So the
case.
across the street mobile home park doesn't,
We consider the 4th Avenue Street a separation, so no, it would not apply. And it's not a, technically it's C4 along that frontage, so
Mhm.
it's not residential, it's commercial.
okay, okay, all right. Dean, I wanted to ask, that's a hard paved surface, so you will be taking on a stormwater utility fee
We already do.
in regards to that property.
We already do on that piece of property.
Do you?
Yes,
Okay.
it's already on there. It's paid already.
It's the other one, that your property at Halsted is delinquent
Yeah, well,
by a significant amount.
well, that one there is, I have no water. I've had no water on the property for several years. In fact, I've had it one time and it was more of a problem. The other problem is none of my water goes into the city at all whatsoever. It all stays on me. So I don't, that's one I don't feel I should have to pay. If I'm not using your services whatsoever, it's just a building, it's just a warehouse.
I would
don't-
assume you've probably taken it up with which department would it have been, John?
It'd have been in stormwater in city engineering.
City
Back-
engineering as to that property.
This goes back to when we
Yes.
first implemented.
Draining or not. And I appreciate what you're doing here with this property, but I have a little bit of trouble when I know that you're thousands of dollars delinquent on
I
stormwater
have a
utility.
problem with $500 a month for nothing that you get nothing, I get nothing for. I get nothing for the services. The water stays on me. My ground is actually,
Apparently, the engineers disagree with the water staying on you, otherwise there'd have been some offset to that.
we've tried and, I've had it surveyed. They just tell me that, because it's a big building, yes, all the drainage goes basically to the west.
Yeah. Well, I'm not willing to discuss that because that's
Yeah.
something between you and engineering, and I know that you've undertaken that. The issue is that you are delinquent. And
I'm be honest with you. I mean, I've tried to get it lowered. I've tried to do a lot of things. They were just adamant because it is such a large building, but they didn't take in consideration. I have a lot of grass area. I have a lot of place for the water to go to, and the drain is actually higher than my property. I've had it surveyed. The one drain that, if it did go in there, the drain is actually higher than my property. So all the water stays on me in my parking lot and into my grass area.
but I am correct, you are delinquent,
Yes, I know I am. I see the bill come every month and I'm saying.
and you ignore it.
If I don't get a service for the product, I don't feel nothing. I mean, I've never had water on the property. I don't use the sewer. I don't use the water. It's just a big vacant building to me. And like I said, I rent stalls to people so that they can have a place to get them off the streets.
So what is the enforcement next step?
Well, they're really, I mean, obviously, most of our stormwater utility customers have a water service that they lose. In this place, there's no utility service to disconnect. So now, if it was at the other location, there would be a utility there. So, and I believe, I don't know the history, but and I know Dean spent a lot of time, there was a lot of negotiations from the original charge to what it is today based on impervious areas and that calculation. But at some point in time, if an individual's renting truck space, it's an income producing property, begs the question. I think there's a lot of people that probably would just do not pay it if they could, but they do. So, I mean, there's nothing in the current ordinance that would exempt that property from the stormwater utility.
You don't take the same exception to this property that you
No.
take to the other.
No. This other property, it is asphalted. It is actually serviced into the streets. It's been run down where the water runs in the streets. Yes, no. And the people that have the water, I tell them straight up, you got the stormwater drain to pay. And if they move out, I've got the stormwater drain to pay. But I tell them it's their bill, it's not mine. They're the rental of the property.
Okay, so you plan to have like a triple net lease or something where they'll take care of that?
Yes, they're taking care of the stormwater drain because they have water. That's on the property. And as far as renting the places on the other place, I don't even rent it for $500 a month. So it's not really making any money. I would lose money still paying your stormwater drain. If it was a reasonable amount where I could have water in that building, I would do it. But it's not a reasonable amount. $500 a month for water not going anywhere. If it was going into your storm drains, if it was going anywhere, I own all the grass property, I own all the property everywhere around it. All the water stays on me.
Is that an accurate representation of the dollar amount? I'm not doubting you, I just want to make sure that's accurate.
Yes.
The 500 per month? Okay. And the program's been in place for what, a couple of years anyway?
2 years, 3 years maybe.
3 years.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, Dean, I certainly struggle with your refusing to pay a fee that is associated with property ownership, in this case, your property ownership. And looking at although the two are different, I mean, it's just, you're refusing. And we don't have an enforcement mechanism, and yet here we're being asked to consider something that's a benefit to you in your business.
It's a benefit to you guys.
And
They can park their trucks down Superior.
it seems that that's a juxtaposition there that's not setting well with me. So I wanted to raise that.
A reasonable price amount, if I had a house that was 30,000 square feet, all asphalt around it, the city would charge me $4.
Well, it'd be a little more than that.
Not, it's $4.75. What is the stormwater drain for residential?
Yeah, but it's
There's a whole
it's figured on
residences
your-
that are up there off 30th and everywhere else, that the whole blocks are concrete. And you got 4 houses, and you're getting $20. And you got me with the same amount of property that is dirt, asphalt, rock, everything else, and you want to charge me $500 a month because I am of a business. This is where I realize this probably isn't the place to have this conversation.
It is a separate issue,
Yeah,
but
it really is.
it's probably a point that need to be made, and at some point in time, we'll have to decide what action we can take to collect those delinquent fees, because there is no utilities, but there would be avenues through the court system if that's a position we choose. So I would remove that. But
Okay.
Mayor's point is, I think, well stated.
Yeah. Amy, if you wouldn't mind, and I'm sure I read it in the reports, I apologize, but was there any public comment with regards to it?
There was no public comments in this case.
Yea or nay, just no comment, okay. And if I read correctly, planning was in favor, 8-0, yeah. Staff was also
Right, we
on
did.
board.
I mean, this is an upzone, so we cautioned the planning commission on approving this, but they felt that any adverse effects would not be felt by any of the neighbors because of the transitioning of that neighborhood into industrial uses. So,
Okay.
Would you go back to the zoning map that shows what surrounds it again? Everything's industrial to the east
to the
and
east.
south,
Hmm.
and at least in that immediate block, it's just that corner, that's C4 at this point.
That's
in
correct.
time.
Yeah.
And then what? I-1 to the north.
I went to the north, and then Mobile Home Park
And the Mobile
and
Home
C4. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And the comprehensive plan, again, suggested, I think is the next slide, or maybe the next slide, that it
All transitions to industrial over time.
this would lend itself towards that direction.
Does this have any impact either in Amy, in bringing additional cost liability down the road to the city, or on the positive end, productivity or revenue?
Sure. I mean, I don't know if I'm the right person to be answering this. I think there is obviously some wear and tear that's going to be on the streets with commercial trucks, but this is already a commercial truck corridor, so I don't anticipate any additional besides what we see every day today. The previous use was for vehicles, personal vehicle sales, so it's almost a similar use with similar. Yes, it was a used car lot. So I think it's suited for this type of use. As to revenues or anything like that, I'm definitely not the person to answer that. So.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Okay, is there a motion? I'm sorry, hang on. Dean, do you want to add anything else before we close?
This is a big improvement for the city because they can go anyplace else. They choose the spot that it was because it was close to Kroger's warehouse. They can move it outside the city. You're talking potential lots of taxes. There's going to be over 30 drivers be in and out of this place. A lot of income will be made off this transaction. Not for me, but for the city. I mean, people are wanting to move here to buy houses. They're wanting to do their shopping here. I mean, we got an industry here that wants to move into our town.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would move to approve ordinance amending the zoning map referred to in section 27-402 of chapter 27 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Hutchinson as adopted by ordinance number 2011-3 and repealing certain parts of the original zoning map as designated in 27-402, 2301 East 4th Avenue and 000 East 4th Avenue and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Wow.
It's a mouthful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes. Before you announce the next item, would it be proper, and as following up on the item that you mentioned, John, to maybe ask for an information presentation in regards to commercial property, commercial parking on city streets? My understanding that ordinances limit the length of time vehicles can be continuously parked. Anyway, just to have maybe a presentation, I'd be interested in that.
I know we've broached the subject before, but it's been a minute since we talked about it. I don't recall exactly how the ordinance reads.
If we could, I just.
We've been pretty permissive, I think, and rightfully so. I get all of that, but the burr that gets to me is in and around the hospital, and I probably in multiple areas there. And I again,
if you could, Paul, maybe next several meetings or so, what are the ordinances? Maybe what are some options? What are some, maybe even some comparisons with other cities as well? Okay.
Well, let's add school buses parked in residential neighborhoods to that list.
Okay.
yeah, yeah. It's again, I don't want to suggest that here we are, the city wanting to overregulate again,
Yeah,
and that's an issue that a lot of folks will have, and I'm not advocating that. I'm just
Probably be good to take a look. What's on the books?
take a look at it. What's
Yeah.
on the books, and then take it from there. So
Well, at least have an information base to work from.
I don't in any way want to overregulate anything. So
Okay. Next item.
Item 6B, consider ordinance rezoning property in the Broadland subdivision.
Amy Allison, Senior Planner again. This request is coming from Jenny Clark. She owns the property at 2816 East Leonard Avenue. However, this request extends beyond her property. She is, I believe, just to give you some backstory, in the process of selling to her current tenants, and where the tenants they were going through, their mortgage process, and that's when the bank identified that their property was zoned I3. So as an industrially zoned property, their use of a house is legal non-conforming, meaning if it were to be destroyed beyond 50% of the value of the house, they couldn't rebuild as it is. So as the bank was going through this, they identified it was I3, and they determined they could not lend on that house because there is no ability to rebuild, which is something that we've come across in the past in the city when talking to financing institutions in regards to industrially zoned properties when they are residential. So We were notified by Jenny Clark that she was interested in rezoning the property so she could sell to her tenant. We told her, you know, as a single lot, we would highly recommend not going by yourself. We call that spot zoning, and it's not something we like to promote. So we told her it was in her best interest to contact the remaining residential areas or residences in her neighborhood to see if anybody else would be willing to go in on this rezone with her. So what you see outlined in yellow is those that they were able to contact, and then other uses in this neighborhood that we felt would benefit being rezoned from I-3. So her request is actually to rezone what is now I-3, as you can see here, to C4. And we did not put in that map. What the C4 zoning designation will allow is residential uses to be permitted with a special use permit. So they would still have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals to get their use granted if they want to rebuild. But it gives them the opportunity to do that. As well as maybe allows more uses in this area that currently is not permitted under the I-3 zoning designation. For example, one of those is the motel located at the top left corner. It's that L-shaped lot. Right now it's zoned I-3, and if it were to be destroyed, it could not be rebuilt because, again, it's not permitted in an industrial zone.
That's an in-use operational hotel.
That is an in-use operational
Didn't they have
hotel.
a fire out there at one point? Did it not destroy?
It has to
over
be
a
the
percentage?
total value. So if it was just a portion of it, then yeah, they
It
could
was
have
just they did.
fixed it up. Mm-hmm.
Maybe another piece of property I've been looking at and drove by it a couple of times, the Grondike facility out there.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my question is that if they're kind of landlocked out there and they know it themselves, and they've over the years have expanded that, but if they were wanting to expand in some way, obviously in south or east or west, would this new zoning prohibit them from expanding?
It depends on what they're going to expand. If they're going to park commercial trucks, then yes, they would have to come back and rezone that property to industrial.
Wow. Well, I'd be concerned, man.
Right. As you can see, they're not highlighted in yellow. We're not proposing that they change their zoning designation.
No, they wouldn't change theirs, but I'm talking about the adjoining property there.
Right.
So whether that negatively impacts them in their ability to expand.
Right. It would be a rezone for them, but
I can't see that it would be that big a deal. I mean, if they've bought the property and just expand the zoning, yeah, I don't see that as an.
Well, I mean, the
a
difference
hindrance.
is by right, they can do it now.
Yeah, I know,
And
but
otherwise, they gotta go through a zoning
what I mean,
process,
yeah, but
which
it's not.
was done for that purpose.
It's not insurmountable.
So as part of this process, we had a kind of a little study session with the Planning Commission, and knowing that, you know, maybe there are some industrial businesses that could expand over time, the request was made that while the proposal be for the zoning, the underlying land use, comprehensive land use designation remains the same as it is now, which is industrial, which would give them a better chance, I guess, of rezoning in the future because that underlying land use designation would be industrial for them. Mm-hmm.
Can you, and looking at what we have in our packet, can you point out which of those parcels are occupied by a residence and or which are not, or is everything in yellow occupied by a residence or a
Almost all of it that is in yellow is a residence. Like I mentioned, there
looks
is
like there's several that are vacant. Or
there are vacancies,
Okay.
but most of them are actually owned by people who have a house in that neighborhood. So they're just a separate lot when you pull them up on the map. But yeah, really quickly.
Pull up that housing condition map, Amy.
Oh, we did not put that in the presentation.
Oh, okay, because it shows real clearly which are houses
okay,
and
thank
which
you for
aren't.
mentioning that. Okay.
It's in the packet, though.
Yeah, it's in the
Yeah.
packet.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Those that are colored would be residences, and those that aren't are commercial or industrial uses.
Okay, thank you.
So, like I mentioned, there was a request to keep the underlying comprehensive land use map the same as it is now, which is industrial, which any future rezones would assist if they want to go back to an industrial zoning designation. Here are some of the houses that are located in here, and there's quite a number of them, around 30. I'm sorry, I thought we included more photos. Included in your packet was also the actual petition that Mrs. Clark had put together with all the owners, and as you can see, quite a few of them signed, and she included that as part of her application. There were 2 comments received, one written before the meeting and one during the meeting. The one written came from a neighbor to the south that is an industrial use, and her concern was similar to what Mr. Daveline had already mentioned. Well, I guess not similar. She wanted to know if there would be any negative impacts on the existing industrial uses, like mitigating, sight, sound, all of that. I did look through our zoning ordinance. For the most part, any of those mitigating factors are based on the actual use, not the district. So right now, since they are residences, if an industrial use were to, say, be located next to this house up there in the top right corner, they would have to screen, regardless of its zoning designation. It's based off of its use. So the only one that we could come up with that was based off of zoning designation was the salvage yard screening requirement, or separation requirement, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the only one that's based off the district and not the actual use of the property.
Amy, in reference to that, as you may know, south of Sherman Street, across the street to the west of City Beverage, it doesn't show on here. There's an 8-acre industrial site that's zoned I3. I guess it's directly south. No, it's south of Sherman.
This one.
Yeah, there you go. There's 8 acres there. That's an industrial site. It's zoned I3. I guess my question is that is there any concern by the neighbors that there's an adjoining I3 industrial site that potentially could be developed for a company?
There are some neighbors in the residence tonight. Mrs. Clark's here along with her tenant and a few other residents in the neighborhood, so maybe they could better address that. But
just so they are aware of that.
Right. In part of the communication, they're well aware that they live in a primarily industrial area.
Right.
Some of them have even mentioned that they liked it because it's quiet at night. But they're well aware, and they know that's the risk that they live here. I just wanted to mention again that if you rezone it to C4, it doesn't automatically grant the single family use to be allowed to continue. It still has to go through a special use permitting process if it wants to be rebuilt, and at that time the Board of Zoning Appeals can say, this isn't the best use for this area because you are located adjacent directly to industrial or that. But it does give them the flexibility to be able to apply for, a permit to build or rebuild in their case.
And I know you're not a lender, but would the banks recognize that ability and then go forward with lending?
Right. We've been in communication with the applicant's lender on this one, and they feel that it would be okay and meet the requirements that they have to for lending on these properties. I think it'll be bank by bank,
Sure, and home by home and those.
And the petition that we have a copy of, that was that represents all of the parcels.
I believe it's the majority of them.
In yellow,
yes.
or a majority of the parcels in yellow. Okay.
Mrs. Clark is here if you want to speak.
Yes,
with
ma'am.
her.
Mrs. Clark or anyone else, but do you want to come forward? And I think there was a question or so that was asked that.
Oh, you had a question, I thought.
What would you like to add to the conversation?
We didn't know. We bought it for our son. We didn't know it was zoned industrial. And then we found out 2 days before we were supposed to close for our buyers. They found out from their bank. So that's why we started this, because we knew we were going to be stuck with it and not be able to sell it if we didn't get it rezoned. We went door to door. There were people who didn't know they were zoned I-3, they thought they were residential because their taxes said residential, which ours do too. I got, you know, concerns from one gal who just moved out there and fixed up a house real nice and had little kids. And she tried to get a permit to put a privacy fence up, and she couldn't because she was zoned I-3, and she didn't know it at the time when they bought the place. One elderly man lived out there for years and years, and he wanted to put in a sun porch, and that's when he found out.
Yeah.
And so he couldn't. He was turned down. So no one can do any improvements, and I think it would be in the benefit of the city too, because it could be used for residential or for businesses. So, and a lot of the empty properties, I know several of them are people who live out there buy them up, just so other people can't buy them and haul their junk in. You know, they're trying to keep the neighborhood cleaned up, which I don't blame them. If I lived out there, I would want it cleaned up. You know, live in a clean neighborhood too.
I think the question was asked had to do with south of Sherman.
Well, there's you may be aware, there's a piece of property
Yeah.
just to the west of City Beverage that's an industrial site.
Right.
And it goes way back in terms of the history of that industrial district and
Right
so on.
across from the west to the west of them, I know a couple of lots cross.
Yeah, they do, yeah, but this
Yeah.
is all south of Sherman, not between Sherman and
Yeah,
Leonard.
well, they bought,
Yeah.
I think he told me he bought some right across from City Beverage, west and south of Sherman too. Next to, in between City Beverage and,
Yeah, there's
the recycling
there's a
place.
narrow strip there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, so,
And that's why they bought it, so they could keep, you know,
right,
people from buying it up just to store junk on.
right, yeah, so just so you all are aware.
Yeah, they're aware, and
Yeah.
like Amy said, you know, right now, the city's not very strict on people, the city never even comes out there. Hardly. They're not real strict on people keeping their yards mowed or their trash cleaned up. This way they would be if it's C4 instead of I3, a little more strict on that. And it'd be a nicer neighborhood. And like I said, it gives homeowners out there more flexibility to where if they wanted to sell, or I talked to one man that owns a lot out there that he's out of state. He called me. I mailed him a letter, and he called me, and he hadn't lived here for years, but he said he would like to do it because he'd like to eventually build a home there or put a mobile home in there, so when he comes back to visit family, he'll have a place to stay. So he'd like to see it rezoned too, so he'd be able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Kathy Stillings,
Ma'am? Okay.
prospective buyer, and we've lived out there for 6 months.
Oh.
And people do keep their yards pretty nice there, I've noticed. And I've never seen any trash blowing around from Sunoco or anything. And we didn't, well, when we went through the whole mortgage process, I guess if we looked it up on the county, the tax assessment thing, and it was residential, and I just never would have crossed my mind to double check that. And suppose we wouldn't have gotten ourselves into it in the first place if we'd known it was industrial to start. But it's a nice place to live, and it's peaceful, and we just hope it works out to be able to buy it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Amy, was she accurate? A privacy fence could not be put up?
Nope.
Right. So as a legal non-conforming use, you cannot expand that use, which,
Oh, they aren't.
you know,
But
based
so-
off of interpretation is no new fences. They can maintain, so they can, you
Right.
know, re-roof, they can re-side, they can do that, but they cannot add on to the square footage of the house. They can't build a new shed, a new detached garage. The fence is something that
So the C4 again would allow a privacy fence with
Right.
going through
special use.
the special
Mhm.
use. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I applaud your legwork as well for getting that many people on board and helping to inform them.
Yeah,
And
help me.
I'm sure, well, great effort to both of you then, or all of you, I should
You do
suggest.
all the maps and stuff.
Right. Well, very good. Because I don't think anybody would entertain just a property or anything like that. But seeing that really is encouraging. Same questions I asked on the last one. We talked about public comment. There was a couple, mostly in favor, it sounded like.
Right. At the meeting, we did have a few people stand up and speak in favor of it. I believe they were residents in the neighborhood, and they'd like to see that change for themselves as well. As I mentioned, we did receive a written comment from a neighbor to the south, which her concern again was what are the impacts on the industrial neighborhoods in this neighborhood, or industrial properties in this neighborhood if it were to be rezoned. And like I mentioned, most of those mitigating factors have to be addressed if it's adjacent to residential. So because they're residential uses, it's a requirement regardless of its zoning designation, except for that salvage yard separation.
And I think I read that letter also, and the concern I got from that also was whether or not the residents of the neighborhood recognize that there could be future industrial use and things like that. And I got the impression they're fully aware of that. Planning, again, was favorable, and staff as well?
Yeah, normally staff wouldn't probably be in favor of this, but we did have a case a year ago that is very similar to allow for a residential use in an industrial neighborhood. So we felt based off of past practice, it's better to support.
A couple of quick questions, Amy. At one point in time, we put in that EN, established neighborhood, and that would not be applicable in this case?
It would be, but as part of that planning commission study session, we discussed which would better be, meet the requirements for the needs of this neighborhood. And with the changes to the C4, the uses allowed under that would be more commercial than just residential and industrial. Under the EN, they would still have to get a special use permit, so there's no real benefit on the residents end going EN than C4. Okay. So,
another question. On your housing map, which unfortunately doesn't show to the public, we have a couple of spots that are in red, which marks them as either very poor or uninhabitable. So does that mean now that if we change it to C4, Trent will have the ability to put that on the demolition list?
I don't think the zoning designation will affect Trent's demolition list or his ability to do that. I mean, he might have, he's shaking his head no.
I mean, I did drive the neighborhood yesterday, and there's some lots that are totally overgrown.
Right.
And I don't know what, if anything, should be done or could be done about that.
As an industrially zoned property, we allow for more metal and acquisition of not pretty things on lots. So by changing it to C4, yes, there would be more restrictions on salvage uses in this neighborhood at the benefit of the residents.
Okay, and I hope too it means that we will get the road grader out there occasionally, Brian. I really thought I was going to lose my car in the ruts yesterday, but okay.
I mean, they're dirt roads.
They're dirt roads.
That's what it is.
Very dirt.
And they get pretty rough too.
Yeah.
The only problem we got there.
We need
Sir,
Sir, if you want to talk, you got to come
to
up.
the podium, please.
Now we're going to get into
Sorry.
I kind of hate to say this, but the only problem we got with the road graders is it seems like the operators really don't know how to grade the roads.
Oh, well, I
that sounds weird,
that.
but it's kind of true. So.
Well, I think we can address that. I think
Brian will take care of it.
Yeah, and really the issue with that neighborhood is the drainage. The ditches don't drain. That means there's water that stands on the road, and it's hard to maintain the roads when they're wet. So one of the projects that we've started on Kirby is to regrade that ditch. And we're going to be improving the road and increasing the cross slope of that road so that it's easier to maintain with our road grader. And eventually we'll get to the side streets as well, improve the ditches on the side streets. But it's not going to happen this year. But it's a longer range plan. But the first thing that we have to do is improve that drainage so that then we can better maintain.
I know they're going through that.
Right.
And I know circumstances happen where they had to stop.
Right.
Okay.
We're in the process of improving that, but it is going to take a little bit of time.
Well, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
You know, what comes to mind just following this brief conversation is what we will be taking on as far as long-term expense in making a change to C4. Not that I oppose that, but we will be, I think, committing to more road work than maybe what we had planned on, since this was an industrial zoned area. And I don't know. Am I off base?
I don't.
Ron, or
I don't know that to be the case.
No.
I mean, my perspective would be that you know, when that property was annexed in the city, it was dirt roads, and it will be dirt roads until we could do an improvement district. But that would be an assessment to the property owners. So as we go forward, it'll be dirt. And whether it was
I wasn't assuming paving, John, as mainly coming off of Brian's comment about the work that it would take to improve the ditches, and the drainage, and crowning the roads and those kind of things. And I don't know if that was planned to occur regardless.
Yeah.
Regardless of a zoning change. Okay. Yeah. All right. A miss assumption on my part then. Okay. Further questions or discussion? Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I'll give it a stab. I would move to approve ordinance amending the zoning map referred to in section 27-402 of chapter 27 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Hutchinson as adopted by ordinance number 2011-3 and repealing certain parts of the original zoning map as designated in section 27-402, 2301 East 4th Avenue and 0000 East 4th Avenue, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Let me hold you up there, council. That can't be the same property.
Right, no, it's, the address is wrong.
Yeah, yeah, that did seem out of sorts.
Just amend your motion that it's basically roughly located like it says here, 4th Avenue to Leonard Street and Scott Street to the drainage canal.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so to amend that, where are we at? The bottom portion there?
Yeah, right. 2301.
Okay, yeah, so amend that, remove the 2301 East 4th Avenue to 000 East 4th Avenue to read, located from 4th Avenue to Leonard Street and Scott Street to the drainage canal from I-3 heavy industrial to C-4 special commercial district. I told you I'd take a stab. I didn't say I'd get it right.
It sounded familiar when you read it.
It did when I read it as well. I was like,
We're
what?
going, wait a minute.
Is
I'll second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes. Next item.
Item 7A, consider 2019 health and dental insurance renewal.
More good news.
Yeah, don't steal my thunder. Tom Sanders, Human Resources Director, and like I said, in keeping with the theme of the day, I think, is I get to do something today that I rarely have gotten to do in my career, which is use the term good news and health insurance in the same presentation. So I'm very excited about that. As I'm sure you guys recall, the last couple of years, our health plan has experienced significantly higher claims than expected. And last year, you might recall, we made some pretty significant changes to our plan to keep the premium costs down and also to be more in line with current plan designs that's out there in the market. And I'm happy to report that over the last 12 months, our claims have actually, our overall claims that is, have dropped 26%. So I think that for our group, I think that's a huge number. Our high-cost claimants continue to be running a little bit above normal, but again, I think that trend is looking very positive. So we're excited about that as well. As we began the renewal process this year, we had USI go out and competitively shop our plan. They developed about 5 different options for our Health and Wellness Committee to consider, and we had a great discussion about all that back on the 16th of October. And we're recommending some changes. Primarily, you know, we've talked over the years about one of the reasons why we went away from Blue Cross and so on and so forth was the opportunity to start unbundling some aspects of our plan. And so this year we're going to do that. The group decided to keep the Aetna network, so that piece of it all is not going to change, but we are going to start unbundling our plan administration, our stop-loss insurer, and our pharmacy benefit manager. And Aaron Wells with USI is here today, and in a couple of minutes I'll have him come up and kind of explain a little bit more about that whole new service configuration. But suffice it to say that by doing this, we'll save at least $300,000 next year without making any significant plan changes to the negative. So we're excited about that. And coupled with our lower than expected claims, we're actually going to be having a reduction in our premium cost next year of 3.8%, which is, I can't remember when the last time I've been able to say that to anybody. So we're excited about that. That equates to about $106,000 over what we're paying in 2018. We are going to recommend a few minor changes to the plan. Our co-insurance on prescription, right now it's a straight 70-30. Co-insurance, we're going to change that next year. At least we're recommending going to a 75-25 split for generic and formulary drugs, and then a 65-35 split for non-formulary drugs. And then right now our ER visits we have a $200 copay, and we're recommending keeping that $200 copay, but also adding the deductible and co-insurance as part of that cost. And then out-of-pocket max, right now, for non-network providers, there's not an out-of-pocket cap. And we're recommending that cap be implemented next year. That's basically twice what the in-network cap is. So I think those are all positive changes. We're also recommending that we continue on with Teladoc. As you guys probably know, we kind of have an urgent care gap here in the city right now. And so we're hoping that this creates some additional access to healthcare providers during those off hours and times when it's, you know, you don't want to run to the ER, but the clinic's not open, or your regular family practice doctor isn't there. So we think that's a good thing to keep on doing. We also had USI switching over to dental. We had them competitively shop our dental plan as well, and we're going to be recommending moving our plan from Aetna to Delta Dental. Primarily, the reason for doing that is Delta Dental has a very strong in-network provider network here in Hutchinson, and that will bring savings to our employees in the plan. And since our claims have also been running lower than expected, we're able to keep the premiums next year flat. And we are recommending, as you might recall, last couple of years we've kind of toyed with putting a per member cap on it per year, and we're going to recommend doing that this year. That cap is at $2,500, which is still a very high cap when you compare it to most dental plans in the area. So in terms of the budget impact for next year, during the budgeting process we projected 6.5% increase, which is about $180,000 in new funding. However, if you combine that with the 3.8 decrease, the city will actually be saving about $285,000 in change next year. So that's obviously great news in tough economic times. So, and I think I'll stop right there and have Aaron come up and just talk a little bit more about the new service configurations that we're proposing. So.
Thanks, Tom. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. So I'll just describe maybe briefly at a high level the process that we went through. Being a self-funded health plan, your expenses are about 75% claims expenses and about 25% administrative and stop-loss expenses. So it's real important that we do what we can to control the cost on that 75% of your overall cost, because that's where most of the dollars are. So the process that we went through there is we got a claims file from your current third-party administrator that showed an entire year's worth of claims broken down to the very lowest level, the CPT code or the DRG code, which is what the provider uses when they file the claim. We took this massive file and we sent it to different PPO networks to evaluate what their discounts were. And at the end of that, what we learned was for the claims that you had during that 12-month time period that we evaluated, the Aetna network yielded better discounts than what their competitors did. So once we found the best network, we set out to figure out the best way to keep those discounts and give your plan the flexibility that you had been seeking, flexibility to do things like shop the stop loss market or shop the pharmacy benefit management market. When you are with Aetna as your third-party administrator, you don't have the opportunity to do that. Aetna forces you to buy their stop-loss insurance. Aetna forces you to buy their pharmacy solution. But realizing this as a weakness, a lot of insurance carriers over the last 10 years have created a separate division within their company, a separate third-party administrator that still has access to the PPO network, but gives you the flexibility that you want. So Aetna owns the second largest third-party administrator in the country. The name of that is Meritain. United Healthcare owns one. Theirs is called UHC. Cigna owns one. Theirs is called Allegiant. So this is a trend that's happening in the industry. So by using Meritain, we were able to shop the stop loss separately. We went to about, I don't remember now, probably 9 or 10 different stop loss carriers. And the best bid came back from a company called HCC. Their bid was almost $250,000 less than Aetna's bid for stop loss. It did transfer a little bit more risk to you, but in terms of a risk-reward calculation, it was much better to carve out the stop loss and go to HCC. We also did the same thing with the pharmacy portion of your program, and are recommending to you a PBM, a pharmacy benefit manager, called Maxor. Maxor is what we would call a mid-tier PBM. Maxor buys drugs for about 5 or 6 million people. So they're not giant like Express Scripts that maybe buys drugs for 40 or 50 million people. But they're not small. They're not, some unheard of pharmacy company that maybe only buys drugs for a couple 100,000. So in that mid PBM size space, what our firm has negotiated is a contract between the health plan and the PBM that the only source of revenue for the PBM is an administrative fee. That's the only way they can make money on that contract. Now, prior to that, Aetna was using CVS Caremark, and in fact, you may have heard in the news that CVS is actually buying Aetna, which is just kind of unbelievable. It's like the tail wagging the dog. But that's how much money is in that space. And so Aetna was keeping all of your rebates, and I would estimate your rebates to be next year somewhere around $100,000. It really depends on your drug mix. There's one category of drugs that if one person takes that one drug, the rebate on that one drug could be $40,000. So it's hard to guess because we don't know the exact drug mix that your health plan members will take next year. But whatever it is, you will get 100% of the rebates. The second thing that contract accomplishes is it eliminates spread pricing. So spread pricing is where the PBM, like CVS Caremark, negotiates a really hard deal with the pharmacy, and they agree to pay the pharmacy X amount of dollars for that drug, but then they mark it up and they charge your health plan a higher price. So I had a good example of this happen about 3 weeks ago. The president of Dan Duran Pharmacy in Wichita called me, and they own a pretty good sized chain of pharmacies in Wichita, I think maybe a dozen or so. And he was very frustrated, and he said that he had a patient come in that was with the state, and the allowance for the drug was $50 less than his acquisition costs. So he was losing $50 on the drug, plus the value of his labor, which is about $10 is what pharmacists tell me. So he was angry about that, and he called the state, and he gets a hold of somebody in the purchasing department, and they're familiar with the state insurance contracts, and they get to dig in, and they find the exact claim that he was referencing. And it turns out CVS billed the health plan $450 more than they paid the pharmacy for the drug. So on one drug, they created a $450 profit, and that's called spread pricing. That's kind of an extreme example, but it's a real life example that I just learned about. So the contract that you have with Maxor eliminates spread pricing. The PBM cannot mark up the drug. So we're estimating, I think conservatively, a 10% savings in your drugs, plus about another $100,000 in rebates. So that would equate to total savings on your prescription drugs of around 20%, something like that. So those were the benefits of going with a TPA like Meritain. We keep the exact same discounts we have today. We keep the exact same network, but now we have flexibility to shop the other major components of cost in your health plan, namely the stop-loss insurance and the pharmacy portion of the program. So that's what we did on the medical, and that's where we ended up. So in addition to having a good claims year last year, this added incremental savings to our projections for next year.
Can I ask a question right quick with regards to the claims going down? Are we talking about the amount of reported losses? Are we talking about paid losses? Frequency versus severity? How did we come down?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a detailed enough explanation for you. I will tell you the methodology that we use to project next year's claims.
Okay, please.
I guess a lot of consultants would use whatever the stop-loss carrier projects. We do not do that. We have an independent team of actuaries and underwriters that work for our firm, and we analyze your last 2 years' worth of claims. We took from that the large claims that were paid by the stop-loss insurance. So now we're only talking about the smaller claims, which for you, I think, is claims under $100,000. Okay. So we got 2 years' worth of claims under $100,000. We've eliminated the anomalies, the outliers, the big claims, and then we've just trended those forward using trends from a national inflationary cost survey by a company called Siegel. And then we've blended those 2 years together, and we've placed 75% weight on your most recent 12 months of claims and 25% weight on the 12 months before that, averaged it all together, trended it forward, added in the fixed costs like the stop loss and the administration to get the projection for next year. And I don't have enough data, I'm sorry, in front of me to tell you how much of that was influenced by maybe a reduction of large claims.
Okay.
You have had, I can tell you this, in the last 12 months that we analyzed, you had $309,000 of claims over $100,000. That's how much came out of the projection. So that would have been paid by stop loss is another way to look at that.
Right.
And then in the 12 months before that, we had $255,000 that came out that was paid by the stop loss carrier.
Sorry, was that 255?
255.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was prior.
Kind of related to that, I'm curious, what's your company's history in terms of increases and decreases to the plan over time, given the methods that you just described to do a projection? How accurate? Are you generally within a 5%, 10% from year to year, or over a period of 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I would say plus or minus 5 for a group your size is a good number. We typically do put a little cushion back in there in case we're wrong, and for your plan we added 5% cushion, or margin is what we call it. So there's a little bit of a fudge factor in there to account for just the unpredictability of claims. The bigger you are, the easier it is, to be predictable as a health plan. Your health plan has about 360 employees on it, and I'm not sure how many members, probably somewhere close to 3 times that many members, maybe 900 belly buttons, something like that. So you're a little more predictable than some. The ones that get really tough are when you get down to 90 or 100 employees. It gets pretty tough to predict a group that size, and we would want to add in a little more cushion. Once you get up to 1,000, you become very predictable. So you're kind of in that middle ground, and we've added a little bit of cushion in there just in case.
With the unbundling and shopping out, is it safe to assume that there could be a change from year to year with provider of those various elements to PBM, for example, or just because there's a better bid?
Right.
And related to that question, is there a kind of a getting up to speed of a new provider in the process of bringing them on for a new contract year?
Yeah, good question. It would be unlikely that your pharmacy benefit manager would change year over year, because we already know we have a contract that we get their acquisition costs and we get 100% of the rebates, and they don't get to retain any revenue. So you can't get any better than that contract. So
it's really just simply their administrative percentage that they charge?
Yeah, and I don't remember exactly. I think they're charging us $4.50 per employee per month, and that's a competitive fee. If that got out of line, then certainly we would take that back out to market. We've had some long-term experience with Maxor. I say long-term, probably 5 years, 6 years, something like that at our firm. And they've been a very good partner for our clients, and we probably have about 10 self-funded health plans with them. So I would predict that would be very stable. The stop loss certainly can change from year to year.
Ours is 100,000.
Your deductible is 100,000
per individual. Is there an aggregate limit as well?
Yes, there is.
Do you know what that is?
I don't have that in front of me, but I can give it to you kind of in round numbers.
Sure.
We're projecting your claims next year to be. Let me just do some really quick math here. 633 times 360 people times 12. We're projecting your claims to be about 2,734,000 next year. And the aggregate attachment point, which is the point where if a whole bunch of small claims go over a certain number, you're done paying.
Right.
You understand how the big claims work. If it goes over 100,000, the stop loss carrier pays, but then you've got this aggregate.
Right.
And that corridor is usually 25%. So there's about a $546,000 aggregate risk in there. So if the bubonic plague hits, whatever causes a whole bunch of small claims, you would have that much additional risk. Now, let me give you some risk scenarios real quick so you can understand how big of a risk that really is. The best way I can relate that to you is to tell you what the premiums are for the specific stop loss insurance versus the aggregate stop loss insurance. Right. So your specific stop loss premium is $135 per employee per month. The aggregate stop loss premium is $5. So the risk of you having a whole bunch of small claims that eats up that $546,000, the stop loss carrier sure doesn't think it's very risky. And in fact, if you look at our entire client base of self-funded health plan clients, and over all of the years I've been doing this, if you took our 60 self-funded clients times let's just say the last 15 years, we've got a lot of client years. I've seen that happen twice.
Wow.
And they were to a lot smaller health plans than yours. So it's a very low risk that you would blow through that.
Well, it's fantastic that you've found these kind of savings mechanisms. Going forward, you've probably captured some of the maybe easier things to do, and that's good. You did. You captured them. But what about going forward? What might we expect in terms of your ability to maybe not necessarily be producing at the same level, so to speak, but navigate an even more cost-effective health, self-insured health plan that we've got?
Right. Good question. So if you look at the components of cost that drive your overall cost, there's three components. It's the unit cost of every unit of healthcare you consume, every doctor visit, every prescription drug, whatever, times the utilization. So how many units did we consume? Plus the fixed costs, the administrative costs, and the stop-loss costs. So we'll continue to monitor that and shop the stop-loss every year. And we've, like you've said, we've found the low-hanging fruit. So for us to continue to make an impact, the biggest area that we could work in is how do we decrease utilization? And the flip side of the decrease in utilization is how do we make people healthier? That's what decreases utilization. So, we're engaged with your committee. We've had discussions about next steps in terms of your health and wellness program. Population health management is what we call it. Sometimes wellness means, did I get a discount off at the gym? We're looking deeper than that, trying to connect people with a primary care physician to manage their care, giving them incentives to have routine care. Because we know if they do that, we will lower costs in the long run. So those are some of the strategies we're looking at. And then we're also looking at ways to decrease unit costs going forward. So for an example, we're looking for better pricing through some special relationships with certain pharmaceutical companies. We're looking at alternative drugs as we design the formulary list. So things like that as we go forward. We're doing some unique things in our office to try to take advantage of some better purchasing on the pharmacy side. But the main thing we can do is if we can increase the health of your membership, we will decrease utilization.
I was thinking about asking you about wellness. So,
sure. The right answer is 5% decrease every year from the next 5 years.
Yes, sir. Yeah. You can promise that we'll sign the long term.
Unrealistic as it may be, but still, yeah, that is the right answer. Did you have anything else to add?
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, a question or two.
Sure.
Is the rebate savings that was mentioned part of that 280?
Yeah.
That's part of that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And a question kind of wrapped within a suggestion. Have you looked at or are you looking at encouraging employee spouses to utilize their own employed employees' spouses to utilize their own employer's insurance?
That's something that we have talked about. We haven't gotten very far with it, to be honest with you. I think it's still very much on the table because I think that's, I think every employer is looking at those kinds of things. One of the things that I think has been a barrier is just the administrative burden that may take to figure out, okay, who's really got a spouse that's eligible to go somewhere else. But we're looking at what are the for the companies that do that, what is the best practice to do that without being too onerous and to have to hire another HR staff to track all that stuff down. So that's one thing that is definitely out there. It is a trend. It's a growing trend. It's on our radar screen.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I would think there would probably need to be some incentive to make that happen. And they,
or disincentive.
Or disincentive.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
In the current environment that we live in, competitive pay is a big feature, but I've found that the benefits package is equally, people are very much concerned about that. Do you feel that this is a rich policy comparative to other municipalities?
Last year when we recommended the plan changes, we did it before we made the plan changes or came with recommendations. We did a pretty extensive study of plan design. We looked at a bunch of different cities in Kansas of similar size. We also looked at national and regional data from private sector, public sector. Kaiser Permanente puts out a great survey every year that has some great data slices in it. So and there's some other good ones too. Gallagher has a really good survey. So we looked at all that before we made the recommendations that we made. And I think, our plan is very, very, very competitive. I wouldn't call it overly rich, but it's by no means a bare bones.
Okay.
I think it's kind of in a sweet spot there. So I'm glad this year we're not having to, talk about raising deductibles or those kinds of things. So that's a joy.
Sure. Yeah.
So that doesn't get to happen very often. So that's been nice. But that said, I don't think our deductibles and all that are out of whack in a significant way from where the market's at.
And the changes themselves, you mentioned 3 of those. I don't know that they're, one has to do with the prescription copay, the other with the ER, and then the out of network. Those aren't.
Yeah. And in fact, one of the good things about our RX utilization is that, and we looked at this last year, probably 90% of the scripts that are written under our plan are falling into the generic and formulary area. Okay. So the vast majority of scripts are going to actually, it's going to reduce their costs some.
75-25,
yeah. So, and when they're on the formulary list, we get those discounts now. So that's part of the reason why we made the change that we made, is that's coming back to the plan rather than to the insurance company.
And that'll really be then a year-to-year type of thing. I mean, it's not a one-time revenue increase or.
Are people taking advantage of the telecom piece, and is it restrictive into who they can utilize that service? Or
when you look at our utilization numbers on the teledoc, it's actually probably better than average for a group of our size. But one of the things we're going to be doing in open enrollment is it does take some upfront setup on the employee's part. You can't just call up one day and say, hey, listen, I want to do teledoc. You need to go ahead and get in touch with them, get your data so they have it. And that's the piece that I think a lot of employees, that keeps them from using it more. So we're going to try to put a big push on that during open enrollment to heighten their awareness. Where there's not a copay that goes along with that. So that's an incentive. So I think we'll see higher utilization next year, since we're putting more of an emphasis on that.
Getting people enrolled.
Yeah. But already our utilization's not bad, and the people that have used it, we talked about this in our health and wellness committee. They have really sung its praises. They really, really like it. When your kid's sick on Sunday afternoon, and
it's always the worst time at the wrong hour.
Right now, you've got the option of driving to Wichita to an urgent care facility or an ER at the hospital. Or, it's just not good, and especially if it's something that's pretty routine, and they've got another ear infection, and I need to get some antibiotics, and you can dial in and talk to a doctor within a half an hour, and usually within about 5-10 minutes, you've got your issue taken care of, and your scripts sent to wherever, and they. Teledoc can also send all the notes and such from the consultation to your own primary care doctor. Perfect. So it's a nice augmentation to what your regular. We're not looking to necessarily replace primary care, but it like I said, it really helps fill that gap that we have right now in the community, where we just don't have a lot in the way of urgent care.
Perfect.
So.
Well, I think it was a good move when staff recommended changing to USI and what we've seen this year, and I've been impressed all along with the Health and Wellness Committee and the utilization by the city and staff on that committee and making joint decisions, because as David indicated, benefits as part of a package of employment are valuable and or can be expensive, as in the case of healthcare. And so having staff involved through the health and wellness, I think, is an excellent way of providing the healthcare package
Yeah,
for employees.
we're very blessed with a good group of folks. You know, they are really interested. They're smart people. They ask great questions, and we have good discussion. And you know, it's I think when you have all those components together, you get good results. So,
anything else? Is there a motion?
I'll start saving some money. I will,
Is that a motion?
Well, let's clean it up a little. I would move to approve the proposed 2019 health and dental program changes and authorize the staff to execute the group health and dental insurance contracts with Meritain for the 2019 plan year.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Daveline?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 7B, consider update on structures determined to be unsafe and dangerous.
Sure, it's good to see you back again on this topic.
Yes, I love coming back.
Yeah.
Good morning, Council. Trent Maxwell, building official for the city. Coming to you for, I think, our second to last update. As you notice in the packet, I've recommended some extensions and one removal. They're all very close as far as progress, and I think this last little bit, they'll be able to wrap this up. Before you is the list of them, 763, 715, 1210, and 28. So as far as the progress goes, 763 East Avenue F, the outside is basically the same. Most of the concern was inside. I went by there on Friday with one of my employees, went by there again. My employee went Monday. They are ready for some plumbing, a little bit of plumbing, and then they will be insulating and sheetrocking the walls. And so that is where they're at. They've been working hard, building stairs and framing and getting everything right for their daughter that's going to take this house. And I don't know if you guys want to visit on each single one or as the group, because there's two motions today. How would you prefer to go through?
Why don't we do the three?
Okay.
And then the one.
Yep. Okay. Second one, 715 West First. I went by there last week, I think on Thursday. It is sheetrocked, but he has a little bit of plumbing to do for the bathroom and kitchen to be functional. A little bit of work for a landing and door, and then he'll be finished. And so I think he'll come right along, no problem. And I think, 2 months is the safe part. Some of them may be done before then. He'll probably be done in a few weeks. He's really anxious to get in and move into the home, so that is where he is at. And then 1210 North Forest, went by there also last week, and I've had two employees go by there as well. He's had his electrical framing all inspected. He has his plumbing probably close to done or started, and so he's pretty close to the other one as far as a little bit of plumbing to do, get it inspected, and then he'll be insulating and sheetrocking this house. Those are the three that I've recommended the 2-month extension. We've got two property owners in the group with us today. If you have any questions for them or any more questions for me.
Well, it's just good to see. I know it's been a laborious and long process this year, but it sure is pleasant to come to this point, and folks are making good progress, and the finish line is in sight.
Absolutely.
Trent, in your memo, you mentioned here with an additional 2-month extension of time, the rehabilitation of the structures could be completed. Are you comfortable with could or will or shall?
I would think so. I visited with each one of them. They've been optimistic this whole time, but once you start getting once your roughing's complete and you start putting sheetrock on the walls, it tends to go quick. At that point, they can see the finishing stages. And at some point, whether all cabinets are in or if the carpet's not in or whatever, I'll come back and recommend removal anyway, and we'll work with them on the last few items. So I'm optimistic.
This should be the conclusion of any extensions.
Correct. I think when I come back next time, it'll be removal of
For
them
removal?
from the list. Yep.
Okay.
Very good.
I don't know if we have any questions of owners. I guess I'd offer the opportunity if any owners want to address this. I don't know if that's up to you. Do we have any questions of any of the owners?
Nope.
He's leaning forward.
So I might just
Okay.
Yeah.
give an update. There was just a little mix-up with the electrical inspection. I installed the wrong breakers. There was somebody came who was not the head of electrical inspection and said, oh, it was fine, and then I went and bought the whole breaker panel worth of breakers and then had to replace them. So those are just on will call at Home Depot right now. Once they come in, they'll be installed, and I'll have electrical turned on by the end of probably this week. I've been talking with Westar. And actually, I went out to reschedule. I have someone coming today to give me a bid on HVAC. I've already budgeted for insulation, so.
Which house is yours?
This one.
The Forest, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So I think 2 months is realistic for habitable, HVAC done, plumbing done, wired, insulated.
Very good.
I really appreciate the patience with the.
Well, the report this time is better than the one last time.
Yeah.
So that's good. All right, thank you.
With regards to the mix-up with the electrical panel, I'm not trying to assign fault, but where does the fault lie with that so that others cannot make that same mistake and set themselves back?
So I'm not sure if the breakers, I wasn't there, if the breakers were specifically looked at the first time, but they're required to be arc fault breakers. And so if you go buy a panel and standard breakers, those standard breakers don't work.
Okay.
So when we actually got our electrical inspector over there for it, panel, everything was there, available. He looked at everything and found that the arc fault were not there, just regular breakers were, so.
How does an individual layperson like myself know which ones, do I communicate with you?
You have to ask the questions.
Yeah.
If you just go to Home Depot, Lowe's, you're gonna find a 20 amp breaker.
Right.
For a few dollars and think it's good, and it's.
I like the price, yeah.
Yes, in most cases it's not good, and the arc fault are considerably more money. They're in the $40 range, so.
Okay. And do you communicate with the individual in that regard? Again, you can't think to answer every question if it goes unasked, but how do you help a person to avoid
It kind of depends. We try to offer as much information, but just when homeowners choose to do their own electrical, breaker is just one component.
I guess that's a valid point. A licensed contractor probably would have known the code.
Like kitchens, homeowners don't typically know you need 2 appliance circuits to the kitchens, and they're ran with 20 amp. And so a lot of it's questions, a lot of it's us trying to educate them, and for them to retain it.
Yeah.
With homeowners, we usually find that there's things that aren't quite right, and we help walk them through it and line it out. Timothy was good on his plumbing to ask the question up advance, saying, hey, where can I terminate this? And so we got him in touch with our plumbing inspector, went over. I think they got him lined out on actually specific fittings to buy. And was told to dry fit it or set it in place before any joints were glued, so he can come by and look at it again and make sure it was correct. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, contractors do it every day. It's nothing for them to know this. Us as homeowners, even if you're told, it's challenging to retain everything. So as long as phone calls or emails keep coming,
communication's key.
Yeah. Okay. Prevent it.
Very good. Thank you both.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I would move to approve a 2-month extension to complete the rehabilitation of 763 East Avenue F, 715 West First Avenue, and 1210 North Forest.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Daycon?
Yes.
Solder?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Decken?
Yes. Good job, folks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so our last one, which I'm recommending removal, is 28 East Bigger. She was here earlier. I think she came straight from work or something. She hasn't slept, so she's in great shape. I'm going to go visit with her. I went and did the inspection yesterday, and there's just minor things to be done. She's got some siding and paint and a few odds and ends things here left to do, but as far as her HVAC, it was completely installed, inspected, so she has heat. She has all her plumbing, electrical. The front porch is one of the structural items listed at the very beginning. It is all completely redone. It's in great shape. She's got a few small items left to do, such as handrails and finishing up a little thing, but I don't have any doubt that she'll continue to work on it. I just think it's at a point that the progress coming back is going to be a little more paint here and there, and it's just probably not worth bringing it to you guys again. I think she can move in today if she wanted, so.
Very good.
Great.
I would move to,
Thank you.
sorry.
Go ahead, go for it.
Being preemptive. I would move to approve removal of 28 East Bigger from the condemnation list of unsafe and dangerous structures.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Call roll, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Next item.
Item 8, report of city officials.
David?
If you have not already, get out and vote. That's all I have. Thank you.
John?
I noticed the mill and overlay has begun on North Main Street this morning. I saw that. So at some point, orange barrels will be disappearing there and moving
Darn.
further
Yeah.
south. Huh?
Moving.
Oh,
missed-
good.
Yeah, they won't
That must have
totally go
happened
away.
later than when I went through, but
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're
Yeah, they were.
they were getting lined
They were
up.
getting lined up this morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
All right. Nancy?
Nothing.
All right. Vote. You got about 8 more hours, I believe.
That's it. Till polls close.
Okay. We need a motion for,
No,
will we be
John-
doing one?
John needs to.
No.
I've just
John
got a
didn't get to
couple
speak.
things.
No.
Promise.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
A couple things. Just some of you may have heard Charles Buckaloo passed away this weekend, and you know he's been a friend of the city. He was a big supporter of the animal shelter and really the foundation behind getting the dog park built. And so he's just a interesting character for those of you that know him. And I just want to wish his family well, and certainly he'll be missed. So Veterans Day on Monday, so city offices will be closed on Monday. And just a reminder of our joint study session with the Human Relations Commission on November the
last
28th.
Wednesday, isn't it? We have another council meeting between now and then as well, don't we?
I'm just going to give you another heads up then.
Sure.
And that will be, we're going to hold that at the First United Methodist Church, and that's at 101 East First, but and that's at 4 o'clock. And that'll be just a joint meeting and talk about the future of the ordinance and where we're headed there. And then just a quick deal, sales tax update, our October receipts were about 1.93% over where we were 2017, which is good, but we're still down under budget. Our projection of about 116,000 for the year, so we more than likely won't meet our specific budget, but you know, we'll see. So it's not all bad news, but pretty flat, yeah. So
What was the location of that meeting again? I apologize.
it'll be at the First United Methodist Church,
Thank you.
right across from the post office there. And that is all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, let me
Except-
look closer.
Yeah.
I think I'm good to go now, aren't I?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Paul, do we make one motion
Yeah.
and then come out of that and
Do the first
make a
one.
second? Okay.
Okay.
Is there a motion for someone for executive session?
I will, and what do we anticipate time on the first
I would
piece?
probably, we're going to go in and back out again?
Yes.
That's right.
Now,
Well, we're going to have to be specific on time if we got to do that then,
Yes.
so probably 11:15.
11:15, very fine. I would move to recess into executive session pursuant to the employer-employee negotiations exception, KSA 754319B3, in order to discuss issues related to 2019 contract negotiations with the city's bargaining units. The open meeting to resume in the city council chambers at 11:15 a.m. That's it.
Is there motion and a second? All those in favor? Or, excuse me. Call roll, please.
You're fumbling here at the
I'm
end.
fumbling, I tell you what.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Decken?
Yes.